Well, hi and good morning. Welcome to this live feed from Lysekil. Third day of racing is just about to begin, and we've got 6 teams out there on the waters, and we will start you off here in our studio on the dock. My name is Frida, and I'm joined here by Liz Bayliss. Hi, Liz.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great.
Where are your nerves right about now?
I've only had a couple of cups of coffee, so they're still a little calm. But sitting in this tent makes it a little more frantic sounding because the tent makes so much noise, and it seems windier than it is, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, out on the water, they've decided to, it looks like, to go with a reef in the main, and I think I saw a flag that says that they're going to be doing no Jennikers to start off this morning, but I think the forecast is that it'll calm down a little, and so hopefully we'll be back into the Jennikers and more fun with that. It's always, we live and die by the weather when we're sailing, and so, on a perfect world, we lay out this great format of what we're going to do for the week, and you have to balance of wanting to get ahead of the schedule, and then maybe not getting too far ahead because we want to make sure we have lots of action on the weekend when everybody's here and have a great finals. So it's always
we'll get
fun.
back to that perfect world schedule, which I think we can stick to, actually. But for the unlikely event that one or two of our viewers don't know what your position in the organization is.
So for this event, I act as the principal race officer, so sitting on top of the organization for the water side of things to make sure that the sportive activity happens and that everything runs smoothly is the plan. Bigger than that, outside of just this event, outside of Lysekil, I run the Women's International Match Racing Association, and the Women's International Match Race Series, of which Lysekil is the second event this year.
Yes, second event. First one was in Helsinki a few weeks back.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Lysekil, third day of racing. Really nice, one has to say, nice weather conditions for today. Yesterday, though, was a challenge. We had planned to get through with round robin, and so far we're 2/3, just about. What happens if we do not, the weather gods are not on our side? Of course they will be, but in the unlikely event that they're not, what happens? How do the competition format develop?
The original plan for the format was to have the full round robin, all the teams meet each other, and that makes for a really fair competition, and then the top 4 from that get to move on to the quarterfinals, so then they get to sit while the next 6 fight it out to be the 4 that join them.
What we call a repechage.
The repechage round robin. If the unlikely event that the weather gods aren't in our favor, and we would like the fans to help us, please help us with that, if you have any influence up there. And if we can't, then the repechage is the first to go.
Okay.
It's the first stage that gets reduced because if you think about it, we have 12 teams total. At the end of stage 1, we reduce it to 10 teams because there'll be 4 that move on, 6 that are in the repechage. So if we have to cut the repechage, then we're reducing it from 12 to 8 instead. So
and
the
go
bottom
straight
4
to quarterfinals.
and go straight to the quarterfinals.
So one always aims to finish round robin.
Yeah.
Because if you have finished round robin, everyone has actually sailed everyone.
Yeah, and that's really fairest. You can fall back on that and say everyone sailed everyone. They all had the equal chance to win, to move on. So in the unlikely event that at the end of the round robin we don't sail ever again in the competition, we have a result. That will not happen. So that's what your fallback is. So you get that in your back pocket, and you have that, and then every stage after that, if you don't complete a stage, it falls back to the round robin. So we keep always going back to that.
So, because I was just thinking, so if, just say that you would have to cut the repechage and you go straight to quarterfinals. What if you don't complete the quarterfinals?
So if you get partway through the quarterfinals, there's rules that tell you how to break those ties or make decisions. If the 4 quarterfinals are all tied 1-1, then within each of those pairs, you go back to the round robin.
Okay.
So whoever was higher in the round robin then wins that quarterfinal.
This is quite interesting because one can easily think that in the beginning it's not as important how you sail, and you might think that they are a little new to the boats and they take a little chill, but it might be actually very, very important, of course.
Exactly. You go back to the tie breaks and everything else, but the first stage is really an important stage. So doing well early is important.
You told me yesterday. Yeah,
my mom always used to say, win early and often. And
win early and often. Life goal, actually.
Yeah, win early and often, and,
okay.
Definitely win.
But this day, the third day of racing here in Lysekil, the conditions look really, really nice as for right now. So please join us here on the cliffs. But tomorrow, we have a weather forecast that is quite intense.
Yeah, I think fresh to frightening might be the way, the different forecast models are pretty much all agreeing, which is rare too. So when they agree that much, it's very consistent one wind direction.
All different weather conditions.
Yeah, you have different weather models from the Europeans, the Americans, Norwegians, Swedish. There's different weather forecasters.
And what do they actually say?
They're all pretty much saying at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning we need to make sure that the tents won't be flying away. And then it will build from there. And I think I saw as high as 58 knots.
Okay. But that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
For now, we will focus on making as many matches complete as possible. Yeah. And I think we are about to start some sailing out on the waters.
Yep.
When will a decision be made by the race committee on what happens tomorrow? When do that forecast decision be made?
Yeah, we'll look, the new forecast will come in around noon. And so that'll give us the new models for tomorrow. The hope would be that maybe the system is slowing down and won't come in till later in the afternoon tomorrow.
The weather system, you mean, yeah?
And so if the weather system doesn't come in till later in the afternoon, we might be able to squeeze in some racing in the morning. Or it speeds up and comes through faster tonight. Yeah. That's less likely. Because if it does that, I think then we're stuck for the day. So we'll have to keep looking at it, but probably by midday we'll make the decision on whether the repechage stands. And whether we'll try for it or whether we move straight into the quarterfinals.
Okay. You have a busy day ahead of you. We all have a busy day ahead of us because the sailing is just about to begin. I will pass it over to you, Hanna.
Thank you for that update, Liz and Frida. They were talking a lot about the weather here in the studio, but out on the water, current conditions are a beautiful westerly wind of about 20 knots or 11 meters per second. We are straight into the first flight of the first match of the 16th flight. It's Henriette Koch from Denmark, someone who did just what Liz Mom's advice were. She has won often and early. She's sailing against Britain's Octavia Owen, who is yet to snag her first win. Owen in the blue Sebago boat and Koch in the purple Switzer boat. And we are right into the action as there's less than 2 minutes left on the clock, with the Danes trailing the Brit. We have the stellar conditions. We see a Delta flag on the RC boat, indicating that the teams will be sailing with a reef, so less mainsail than we saw yesterday, and no Jenniker. Prognosis is that the winds will drop during the afternoon, so hopefully we can get some of that action with those beautiful big kites. And we have a dial-up. We see that it is the Switzer boat to the left of Britain's Octavia Owen. The Danes trying to control the situation and getting the better start. As both boats tack back to the starting line, we're going into less than 1 minute to start. And we can see it's really high pressure. It's going to be hard work from all crew members. I believe the Danish crew is a fair bit heavier than Owen's young team. Owen made her debut here in Lysekil last year when she got 10th. The Danes, while Henriette Koch is, as a skipper, And we're back. As we see the first match of the 16th flight heading upwind, it is Danish Henriette Koch in the lead. We jump straight into the second match. It's Russia's Ekaterina Kochkina sailing in the BMW boat, and Sweden's Sanna Mattsson sailing in the green Preem boat with 3 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. This is a match between two teams at the bottom of your point standings. Ekaterina Kochkina with 2 wins so far, 5 losses, and Sanna Mattsson with 1 win. She got it yesterday in her match against Britain's Octavia Owen. So we're following the green Preem boat and the blue BMW boat. So it's Sanna Mattsson tacking back to starboard, and the BMW with the Russian team will have to keep clear. She does just this and rolls under, no foul. And Sanna Mattsson jibes to trail around her and try and control the situation. We can see it's extremely beautiful conditions here in Lysekil, and my oh my have the teams got their work cut out for them today. So heavy winds. We can see that the mainsail looks smaller than yesterday. That's because the RC committee has decided that the teams will be sailing with a reef, indicated by the Delta flag on the RC boat. It also means that they won't be using the Jennekers, at least not for this flight. And as we see the boats coming towards us here on the cliffs, it is Sanna Mattsson trailing the Russian team. The Sanna Mattsson sailing with her main, Nikki Blesser, trim Therese Berg, Louise Lindqvist on tail, and Nelly Lindner on bow. Kochkina is sailing with Tatiana Susulova on main and tactics, Natalia Noga on trim, Sarah Edholm on tail, and Ann Johnson on bow. So 2 Swedish sailors in the BMW boat. And we see both boats coming back towards the starting line. It is now the Russian trailing the green Preem boat with the Swedish crew, and the Russian trying to get in underneath Sanna, trying to control the situation. And she does just this, even as both boats tack to port. The Russian will now have to go in speed mode, so sailing lower and faster, trying to hook Sanna Mattsson, being the leeward boat with an overlap. And it's fantastic sailing images. We see them now racing towards the cliff and all the spectators here in Lysekil. While both of these teams are at the bottom of the point standings and are definitely not in contention for either the of the 4 direct qualifying spots, it is a prestigious game as both teams will want to clean up their score sheet. So Ekaterina Kochkina currently sitting on 2 wins, Sanna Mattsson on 1. And now it's still the Russian, actually as the leeward position boat, trying to hook, but Sanna Mattsson making her best, trying to go full speed to roll over the bow of the Russian. And it's extremely tight racing. We see it here, the white umpire boat trailing close behind to see if there are any fouls. And with only 22 seconds left on the clock, the Russian opts to head into the starting line to be the leading boat in by the windward starting tetrahedral. And with less than 5 seconds to go, I'd say this start will go to the Russian. She leads out of the starting gates with Sanna Mattsson trailing behind. And we can see that main actually flopping back and forth, indicating that both teams will have to spill their main. And we see here amazing crew work, and we actually see some teams swapping around. It's Bow Ann Johnson on the main, being the biggest sailor on the boat. you might need those powerful arms to get that main sheet reeled in. And we see them tacking as they want to control the situation following Sanna Mattsson, who tacked to try and get away out of that disturbed air behind Kochkina. So now Kochkina will want to try and maintain her speed, preventing Sanna Mattsson from getting that clear air and getting a free line out on the starboard side of the course. We can see in the graphics both boats similar in speed, but Kochkina pointing somewhat higher. And we see a tack from Sanna Mattsson, and we'll see if the Russian can actually make a clear cross. They opt not to cross. And Libau, the Swedish team, heading back out, and we have a split between the two teams. Russians opting to go left out on the course on starboard tack, Sanna going to the right on port tack. And we're on board with Kochkina again. We see teams hiking for all that they have, limbs and legs out of the boat. Sarah Edholm, their trimmer, pointing where the wind is coming from. And we have a tack. And we'll see what happens. And jumping into match 3 of this 16th flight, it's Claire Leroy in the grey Emerson boat against Margot Venin in the orange Kleppen boat. Claire Leroy sailing with New Sweden match racing team, currently sitting in 5th place in the point standings. Margot Venin in 8th. Venin so far has got 3 wins. Claire Leroy has got 5. But Venin has sailed 10 matches and Leroy has only sailed 7. So Claire Leroy has done a great job of getting back into gear here in Lysekil. She hasn't been seen on this arena for a long time. She's stepping in for Caroline Sylvain, who is expecting a baby any day. Congratulations, Caroline, and congratulations on the New Sweden match racing team for a great regatta so far. And we see the Emerson boat going up, both boats following each other, circling around, vying for that better position. And Venin extends, trying to get some separation, and will probably want to either jibe or tack back to once again attack Claire Leroy. As we follow these boats as they head back towards the shore and our spectators, we see a jibe from Claire Margot Venin as she wants to try and... Oh, and now we have a meeting. And because Claire Leroy is on starboard tack, Margot Venin will have to keep clear. And we have another circle. It's a cat and mouse game, people. And Claire Leroy now jibes back. As the leeward boat, she will want to try and hook Margot Venin, preventing her from the start. With 1 minute and 5 seconds to go, both boats are below the starting line. Claire Leroy here probably will want to try and lock Venin out of starting on time, which is why she's pointing, pinching high. And Venin is actually sitting duck a bit here. And we see a tack from Venin and another circle from Claire, as she will want to try and attack, preventing Venin from actually getting into that starting line. Here, as they go out on port tack, Margot is the windward boat and will have to keep clear. And this pre-start is controlled by the experienced French woman Leroy with her Swedish team, New Sweden match racing team. And as we're on board with Margot Venin is currently ranked number 18th in the world. She's sailing with Marie Zugulara on main, Clotilde Ponson on trim, Juliette Dubreuil on tail, and Sophie Affgard on bow. And as the starting signal goes, it's a fantastic start from New Sweden match racing team with Claire Leroy at the helm. She's sailing with Louise Kruse Afvarsou on main and tactics, Clara Ekdal on trim, Frida Langenius on tail, and Malin Holmberg on bow. And both boats have now tacked out onto port. It is Claire Leroy, a New Sweden match racing team, in the lead, managing to cover Vanna, who obviously realized she couldn't stay in that position. And we see with that amount of heel in the tack, the wind is really filling in. So we currently have a westerly breeze of about 20 knots. Boats with a reef are doing up to 6 knots on the upwind with a reef. These super light boats are very sensitive to winds, and in this heavy breeze they have a lot of sail for a very light boat, which is why the race committee has decided that all teams will sail with a reef and we do not allow Jennekers. And as Venon tries to attack, Claire Leroy has her game and matches that. And we see all teams out hiking as much as they possibly can, but even so it's not enough, and they will have to release that main sheet to release some tension in the sails. So orange left boat, Margot Vanna, grey Emerson boat, it's Claire Leroy. So two French skippers facing off against each other, one Swedish and one French crew. And Vanna attacks again, trying to get out, but we have an amazing tackling duel, and it's definitely Leroy who has taken the charge. The seasoned skipper has been sailing here in Lysekil. She was in Busan 2 years ago, and the team in itself are no stranger to the WIM Series arena. They took 5th place in Busan with Caroline Sylvan as their skipper, and took 5th place here in Lysekil last year. Had a great start to the round robin, but got knocked out at the quarterfinal stage. And we have an amazing tacking duel here between the two teams. The blue boat at the top of your screen, it's a different match. That's Octavia Owen from Great Britain, and she is trailing. And we're on board with Venna. We see the teams really working hard, that trimmer winching for all she can. But as we can also see, we have a sail just in front, meaning that she's covered by the Swedish team with a French skipper. Tacking again, they're trying to get out of the claws of Venom, but not of Leroy, but not really succeeding. As we follow them upwind, they are approaching the windward mark, so on their first upwind. So just to remind you of the course, these teams will have to go up to that yellow cylinder top windward mark, and then they will go downwind, but this time not hoisting the Jenneker. Then they will go down to the bottom leeward mark to go up for a second and final upwind before they can cruise down to the finish line after their second downwind. So we're sailing without Jennekers. The RC has deemed that the conditions are a bit too heavy, and safety first. We want to ensure that all teams are safe, and it's still spectacular racing here. Bright sunshine, heavy winds, westerly breeze. You see that white umpire boat trailing them, no flags indicating that there has been no fouls and no penalties in this match so far. That blue boat rounding right now is not part of this match. That is Britain's Octavia Owen, who is racing against Henriette Koch of Denmark. So, following the two boats upwind, it's Claire Leroy leading Margot Venna, both skippers from France, a bit of a derby, but Leroy actually sailing with a Swedish crew, the New Sweden match racing team. And here we see it in the graphics, so much easier to see where the boats are positioned in relationship to each other. It's the Emerson boat first to approach that port ley line, as she will do a conservative rounding, taking some extra room, ensuring that she will get around that top board mark without having to do a last-minute extra tack. The Kleppen boat, some boat lengths behind, as they will round the top mark. And Emerson is first to round with Margot Venin trailing. They had a pretty intense tacking duel, but it looks like the winner of that one was Claire Leroy, as she has extended into about a 5 boat length lead going down on the downwind. So usually we would see the teams working frantically to hoist that Jenniker, but as the RC has deemed conditions to be a bit too heavy, they have hoisted the Delta flag, indicating that teams are sailing with a reef and no Jenniker, at least for this flight. And we see here in the Grey Emerson boats the crew of Claire Leroy looking back to see what the crew of Margot Venin is doing, seeing if they're gaining, closing that gap. But it looks like for now they're in a pretty comfortable lead of a few boat lengths. A lot less dramatic downwind without the Jennikers, as there's a very much lower likelihood of mistakes. No possibility of that Jenniker getting caught around the foresail. And we also see, as the boats sail at a very flat angle, that bow is actually winging that jib to get it out from behind the disturbed air of the mainsail to get as much as of pressure as possible into those two sails that they have. And we see now that Venin is actually covering Leroy as they're coming down. The reverse situation as we have in the upwind, because the wind is now coming from behind, meaning that the trailing boat is actually able to cover the wind and give disturbed air to the leading boat. So it is a treacherous situation being in a slight lead on the downwind, as you have that opponent hunting you down, trying their best to cover your wind and then potentially sailing at a slightly faster speed. And this is just what is happening. We can see, as indicated on the graphics, Venin is sailing at 8.1 knots without the Jenniker, and then Leroy is only sailing at 7.2 knots. So Venin should actually be closing this gap a bit now. As we take them down to the rounding, it is still a 3 boat length lead for Claire in a New Sweden match racing team, as they do a cool and calm collected. And we're back, and we see that Venin rounded behind Claire Leroy and tacks to get out of that situation, but Claire, with a much better tack, is able to fully cover Venin. We also see that the Kleppen sail is flopping about a lot more, meaning that Leroy is able to sail that boat with more pressure while still maintaining a stable situation. As Venin attacks again, we might see the same kind of tacking duel we had on the last upwind. In that tacking duel, the New Sweden match racing team came out victorious and was able to extend to a 5 boat length lead from what was a pretty even start. But as we also saw, Venin had the faster downwind speed, lighter team, and coming from behind, she was able to cover Leroy. So if I was Claire, I would want to extend that lead as much as possible, because she's going to need a bit of a lead, because Venin is constantly closing that gap on the downwind. As we're on board with Margot Venin, we see very synchronized crew work, team working extremely hard, all out hiking on the rail. And we see that main and tactic working frantically, pulling and releasing the main sheet. These boats are actually very cool compared to most match racing boats. They have a car so that you can adjust the sheet point of the main. They also have a fine trim with a lot more leverages so that you're able to fine tune that trim on the upwind. And as a main sailor myself, it is truly appreciated. Sure, you have some extra lines to keep track of, but when you're out hiking, having an easier sheet to pull to adjust for new conditions is really, really helpful. And we see here now that it's a very close cross, and Leroy actually opting for that lee bow rather than the clear cross tacking ahead of Vanat. So Vanat has actually managed to do something good on this upwind, closing the gap from what we saw in the rounding. And we have another cross, and we'll see if it's a clear cross. Vanat opts for the cross and then tacks. So managed to get that hard cover where she's both to leeward and to the front of Vanat. In the background we see that yellow cylinder buoy. That's the upwind mark, and as they're heading up to that mark for the last time, it is the third leg of this race, and they only have one downwind left. Umpire boat, still no flags, no fouls, no penalties. So if the situation holds, it will be another victory to Claire Leroy. She's currently sitting in 5th place in the point standing, 5 wins, 2 losses, and in contention for getting one of those 4 direct qualifier